In order to understand what it is that people get from your writing, you need to have people read your writing and tell you what their experience was. That is, what they understood, what they thought, and how they felt. Do that again and again, and you will have a feel for what it is that people get from your writing. But how do you do that? That is, where do you go to for critique? Who do you ask to read your stuff and tell you what they think? In this video, I'm going to divide writers into three categories broadly. As a beginner, I think that you should consult professionals, that is, pay somebody to tell you what they think about your writing. As an intermediate with some experience and some skill, you should probably have a writing group of your peers, and only once you're advanced, only once you're confident, I think that you should start relying on the opinions of people who don't write. Let me explain a little bit more on each category. The main two problems for most beginner authors are overwriting and a lack of clarity. Overwriting means using too many words, describing too much, and explaining to the reader things that the reader already got. A lack of clarity is just writing in a way that is difficult for the reader to understand. Now, you might have an example in mind for a writer that you love that writes in a way that is both overlong and difficult to understand, and you love that writer. But that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is a lack of clarity and overwriting that don't result in reader enjoyment because they're not intentional. It's basically a mistake. Fixing these two problems as soon as you can is a strategic decision. The more concise you are, the easier it will be for you to get critique from non-writers as well as from your friends in the writing group. They can't really critique your stuff if they don't understand it, and they're not going to be engaged if they are bored. But why go to a professional with this? You can just ask your friends for advice, right? But then again, non-writers might be able to tell you that your writing is unclear, but they probably won't be able to tell you why. In a similar manner, your friends from the writing group might be able to tell you that you have a tendency to overwrite, but they won't have the time to go over each and every line and tell you how it could be made to be improved. And you do need it pointed out at every single line, at least as a beginner. And this is why I recommend going to a professional editor and asking them specifically for line edits. That is, asking them to go over each line and tell you how it could be made to be more concise. Most professional editors take somewhere between 1.5 to 2 cents per word, which means that you can get a 2,000 word story critiqued for about $40. It may sound like a lot, but the return on investment is insane. Remember, the point isn't to write a concise story, but to learn how to become more concise. So if you get a list of suggestions from an editor, don't just get them into the story, try to see why the editor made these suggestions and how the story could be improved by them. If you take the time to learn, people will feel it in your next couple of pieces of writing. Once you decide that you want to use the services of an editor, you are now faced with the problem of finding one that works for you. That is, one that when they make a suggestion, you understand why and understand what you want to do with the story accordingly. That means asking for recommendations and giving different editors a shot. When I was looking for an editor, I basically asked anyone I knew who was remotely writing related if they knew a good editor. Eventually, I was very lucky to meet one of my favorite authors at a conference and have him introduce me to his editor and wife. I ended up commissioning her for years, and I learned so much from this woman about how to write a good line. I think it's important to say that she didn't change my style in any way. If anything, she made me better at communicating my own style, making it clearer and more fun to read. And still, we don't agree on every single thing. For every suggestion that she makes, I have to stop and think, if I accept this suggestion, will it make the text better in my opinion? For instance, she doesn't really get my jokes and will often mark them for deletion, even though they are objectively hilarious. And I always leave them in. So this is my advice on how to process critique. Only put a change into the text if it makes sense to you. You can't really learn anything by pretending. The next type of professional that you might want to consult is a consultant. So after I learned so much from this editor about how to write a good paragraph, I wrote an entire book, and when I was done, I realized that there were some pretty serious issues with the construction of the plot and the characters. It was about that time that I saw one of Shani's Arcane videos, and I thought to myself that this is a person who really understands characters and plots, and I should maybe talk to him. And then I saw that he was proposing a new patron tier in which you can just talk to him for an hour. I signed up immediately, and for about a year, we talked once a month about plots and construction and what effects different decisions make in a story. I learned what a story is, basically. This is now a service that I offer myself, but honestly, you're probably better off going to Shni with this stuff. He is really, really good. But if you do come to him, don't just let him come up with great ideas for your story. Remember, the point here is to learn. So try to notice why he does the things he does. That is, why does he ask the questions that he asks, and why does he make the statements that he makes? The third type of professional you might want to hire is a teacher. The first writing course that I took was an online course in the University of Toronto. Basically, all they did was just make us write 2,000 words every week and submit them for critique. And then, after 7 weeks of this, we had to write one 7,000 words story and get it critiqued also. It was great. There might be better courses out there, but for me, this basic idea of having to write on a deadline and have it critiqued whether or not I wanted to, whether or not I felt confident, was just so good for me. You just realize that your writing is your writing, and sometimes you write something and it's not that good and you just let it go. I really, really recommend it for absolute beginners more than anybody. My only advice is that if you go to a course, go specifically to a course that makes you write. Lectures are a nice bonus, but lectures about writing, like the one you're watching right now, are absolutely useless compared to writing and getting critique. Okay, so let's say you took my advice here. You had an editor critique your work and rip it to shreds. Maybe you talked to a consultant about plots and characters and what it is that you want to do in your writing. Maybe you even took a writing course and were forced to write 14,000 words and have each and every one of them critiqued. This is great. You are no longer a beginner. It is time to call yourself an intermediate. This is a good time to find a writing group and trade feedback a couple of times a week. A good writing group will be constructed of people who, at the very least, can enjoy the genre or the style that you're writing in. You're not going to get much if somebody just tells you, hey, I'm sorry, I'm not that into science fiction. The best critique that I can imagine getting sounds something like, hey, listen, I really like this story. I really felt the emotion that you told us that you were aiming to engender here, be it horror or romance or intrigue, up until this specific point where you lost me. If somebody gives you that kind of critique, you can know that they have the capacity to enjoy your work. They were with you with what you were trying to communicate. And that also means that the point where you lost them, there's probably something very interesting to you and your needs to find out what it was. Why was it that you lost them? Why was it that they didn't connect with it anymore? The thing about a group of writers is that they will try, at the very least, to explain to you not only what was it that they felt, but why they felt it. A critique like, I didn't like anything about this piece, doesn't really give you much. A critique like, I liked everything about this piece, is nicer on your ego, but it's kind of the same. You don't learn anything from it. Aim for specific takeaways. What did you learn about plots, about occurrences, about characters? What was it that worked and didn't work, and what are you going to do about it next time? Remember, the point isn't to write a good story today, the point is to become better at writing good stories in the future. Your ego is going to get involved. It always does. Try to stay rational. Try not to take it personally. If somebody tells you that everything you do is bad, they probably have their own insecurities and their own anxieties. If somebody tells you that everything you do is great, it might be, they're probably just nice. It's easy for me to tell you to just be rational, but if you find that a group is too emotionally taxing, if you find that you dread the moment before submitting, or that you feel bummed out after every session, maybe you can talk to them, or maybe you can just find another group. Another huge advantage of writing groups is that they force you to give critique. That is, they force you to go through the process of reading a piece of writing, realizing what parts don't work for you, and thinking about ways to make them work for you. The more you do it, the easier it will be for you to do in your own work. So put time into your critique. See it as a part of your training. And if you can, my advice would be to always tell the truth and always be nice. Motivation is a huge part of writing. Please don't let anybody come out of your feedback feeling like they shouldn't write. They can still improve even if they're not so good right now. And every piece of writing has at least one thing that you can say that is actually good, and the person probably needs to hear it, especially if they're not that good. Okay, so let's say you've been with the same writing group for a year now, trading feedback every 2 weeks or so. You've earned these people's trust and respect, and they have earned yours. If at the beginning you sucked at writing, now you feel like you're sort of good at it. You have become advanced. Now, you can keep doing whatever it was that you were doing because it worked for you. You can keep going to the same group and occasionally reach out to an editor if you need help with a specific thing. However, a new avenue for feedback has made itself available for you, and that is feedback from people who don't write. We're going to divide these into two groups. One is your friends who like you, and the other is people online who don't yet. Let's talk about your friends first. Your friends probably won't be able to tell you why they like or not like something. Honestly, a lot of times they can't even tell you that they dislike something, and you need to encourage them. But even if they don't tell you why they didn't like something, if two of your friends tell you that they stopped liking your protagonist the moment she did X, at this point in your training, you should be able to figure out why. The main advantage of friends over writing group buddies is that your friends probably won't ask you for feedback in return. Also, it's just nice to have your friends read your work. It's nice. The last and riskiest source of feedback is strangers online. Now, I talked about your advancements so far in terms of skill, but this is more of a thing of confidence. Most readers online are just really nice. Some of them are intentionally mean because their parents never hugged them and they chose to make it our problem. It is what it is. My advice is the meaner a piece of feedback is, the less weight you should give it. Sites like Royal Road have been a net positive for me. I got a lot of good feedback, I got some bad feedback. Most importantly, I got to see, especially in works that were published in chapters, at which point readers dropped off and which chapter suddenly people stopped reading, and then I could figure out for myself why that happened. So that's one option. Another option is websites for fan fiction. Now, if you're like me and you believe in training, you might want to write stories just for the sake of training. It is something that you don't have to do if you don't feel like, obviously. But the thing about fan fiction is that you don't have to waste time constructing a world and constructing the characters, and also you know that these pieces are throwaway, so you can take riskier decisions. For me specifically, I found that I have a problem with creating tension in my stories, and I wanted to practice specifically from that. So I chose a franchise that I know, and I wrote a couple of scenes, a couple of very short stories with the specific intention of creating the maximum tension. I got a lot of feedback and I got it fast, real fast. If you want to practice making your readers sad or angry or scared, you can practice using fan fiction and get results fast. People will tell you how they feel. The problem with fan fiction, however, is that it's addictive. If you're working on a science fiction masterpiece, you know it's going to be about a year before anybody gets to enjoy it. Whereas if you write a piece of fan fiction today, you know that people will be praising your genius tonight. So, apply judgment. One last thing about feedback from non-writers, they will try to give you writing advice. It's just the way it is. It's probably going to be really, really bad, and it's okay to ignore it. They don't need to know that you don't care. Just nod and say thank you. Let's summarize. As a beginner, you have the most to learn, so it makes sense to pay a dedicated professional to show you the ropes. Also, because they're relatively objective and technical, a professional is less likely to hurt your ego. At this stage, your ego is at its most sensitive. We want you to keep writing, and being wounded at this early stage might get you to stop. So it makes sense to pay an editor, a consultant, or a teacher. After you've gained some skill and confidence, it makes sense to go and find a group of people at the same level as you and trade feedback with them. These people will be able to tell you how they feel about your writing, and also tell you why, because they are also writers. Also, they will get you to practice giving others critique, which is more helpful than you probably imagine. After you've gained considerable skill and confidence in writing, you can keep doing what you were doing, or if you want to, you can start taking feedback from people who don't write. They will tell you whether or not your writing works for them, but it's up to you to understand why. Wherever you are in your writing journey, I hope this helps. Huge thanks to my beautiful patrons, especially Lee Allen Sanders, for motivating me to make this video. Motivation really is important. For $2 a month, you can join my Patreon server where we give each other feedback and critique. For $4 a month, you can join our monthly video calls where we analyze a piece of media together. And for $30 a month, you can commission me for an hour of my time in which I will consult you in any way that I can, from your prose to your plot structures to your spiritual development. Until next time, keep moving forward, you hear?